Hello and welcome back. Hi, Melissa. How are you today?
I am pretty good. How are you, Teresa?
Good, thank you.
Good.
So, I wanted to talk today about, I did a workshop up in Antelope Valley a couple of weeks ago, and the topic of failing came up.
Mm.
And it came up in the context of, how can you overcome that? Like, how do you stop? Well, the question was along the lines of how do you avoid failure, which of course is impossible. So it's really more about it. The conversation turned into the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And that kind of got me thinking because that is really very anchored, or failure is very anchored in there in a way, because nobody likes to fail. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like to fail,
No.
but we all fail at things, and we fail at things because we don't yet know how to do them usually, right? Or sometimes there's external circumstances, but the difference, a lot of it does come down to whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So someone had told me a long time ago, I asked if he golfed, and he said, "No, I'm not good at it, so I don't do it." And I had said, "Well, how do you don't you get good at it by
Trying
practicing?"
to get better, yeah.
And there's really a large percentage of people who feel that way. If they don't know how to do something, they don't want to do it because they don't want to fail. They don't want to look bad, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
have a tough time with actually the word failure. This could just be me, but I feel like it's very final. When you
yeah,
say you failed at something, there's a finality to it where it's like, well, that's that. I failed at it. There's no more trying.
yeah. I mean, in our workshops, we tell people to use learning opportunity instead of failure because a lot of it is really true, though. One of the most famous sort of examples is Thomas Edison failed at creating the light bulb 1,000 times before he got it right. So, what does that mean failure is? It really is learning. We don't learn when everything's going fantastically. I don't
No.
know anybody who, when everything's going great, goes, "What can I change?"
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
don't.
Never. Not at all. It's hard too because as a parent, I deal with this a lot, especially with kids in sports. And my son plays baseball, and baseball is basically a game of failure. It's a game of errors, but there's this ideology of this perfection that, everybody tries to reach this. And in reality, you're not going to get the perfection. And especially if that's the goal, if your goal is just the success part, I don't think you'll ever be successful. It's all the failures and the learnings along the way.
Well, and I think if we take a mindful approach to it, which is in line with what you're talking about, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but it's also about understanding that our perception of failure is going to greatly impact how we react or respond to failure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the person who says, "Well, I don't sew because I don't do it well, I don't golf because I don't do it well," that's more of a fixed mindset because it's implying you can't learn. We all have a fixed mindset about some things. I will say I'm struggling not to feel like I'm failing at Spanish. I'm taking at least a small lesson every day and have been for 227 days straight and still can't speak Spanish. And so part of me is like, "Oh, do I just give up?" Right? Because that's a lot of how we fail. We just throw in the towel. So instead, I'm trying to take a very mindful approach to it, which is, first of all, to be very self compassionate, right? It's not easy to learn a new language. And especially, I think the longer you've only spoken one, the harder it is to kind of wrap your mind around. Not just, I can read it. I will say I've gotten better at reading Spanish, but I feel ridiculous when I try to speak it. And I don't have anyone to practice with. So there's two problems there I know is probably hindering me a little bit. But I'm looking at it each day as, let's just see how I do. Like it's an experiment. Let's see if something clicks today and look at it that way. Another great area for continuous hit and miss is sourdough bread. I have not given up. What's it been now? 3 years. And sometimes it's the perfect mouth-watering loaf, and other times it is awful. And so now instead of
I've
going
had
in,
the brick experience, so I know.
so now I never look at it as a failure because I don't even set it up that way.
Yeah.
I say, "Oh, I'm going to make bread today," and then hopefully it comes out good. I'll do my best. But if it doesn't, it's like, I don't even bother now. I just throw it in the trash. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. That was a failed experiment. It's not that I'm failing at bread making, because bread making is a constant, it's a million variables. You know what I mean? From the humidity to the heat to the whatever. So instead, it's like, no, just the more I do it, and I do notice this, the more I do it, the fewer times it's bad. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still not. It's like the destination thing. I don't think I would ever rely on my bread making for anything of importance. It's the process. It can be very meditative. It can be very pleasurable. You know, the aromas, the I love the rising dough, like the textures. But is it always going to be great bread? No.
No, I failed a lot at yoga when I first tried yoga. Thank God there were no cameras in the room. Um, but I'm a former dancer, so I have balance and I have flexibility, I have grace. However, yoga is a different animal. And when you're in a room, and this occurred to me when you were just talking about, failing at doing something solo. So you're the only person really that knows you're failing, right? And so I think a lot of people fear failure because we're very concerned with how we appear to other people. And doing yoga in a room with a bunch of yogis that are very experienced, and here I am, like, looking around like, what are they doing? I'm going to fall on my head, I'm going to hurt myself. And I kept failing every single time, but I never really saw it as failing. To me, like I said, I don't like the word fail. I wasn't doing well at it, and I continued to go to class, and I went to class 5 times a week, and then eventually I wasn't failing each time, and I was starting to actually get the benefits of it. And then I started to realize it doesn't matter what I look like doing it. I'm doing it and I'm getting something out of it. So to me, it wasn't really a failure. And then I got to the point where I could actually teach yoga. And so then to me, that was a success. But I do think that we have that little thing in our head where it's like, why are we so scared of failing? Why are we scared of it? Because we don't want to look bad, because we don't want to appear like we don't know what we're doing. And I think that is probably the wrong mindset to have, that we're not looking at it as a growth opportunity when we're thinking those things. We need to look at it more as a experience instead of a destination.
The one word that helped me a ton years ago was yet.
Mm.
So I'm not good at it yet. I don't know how to do it yet. I don't speak Spanish yet. I have to keep adding the word yet. So I'm reinforcing in my mind, like, it's coming if we just stick with it. Um, but I do think that you're right. A lot of it is worrying about what other people think. I think some of it is our own sensitivity, maybe our own self-esteem or our own self-worth. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about that? Because I think part of how fear gets so built up around failing is we don't want to deal with the emotions that come up when we don't do something well, or we feel
Yeah.
like we can't do something, right? And instead of processing those emotions, we try to tamp them down. And it's like, we'll just avoid that forever. And I won't have to have that feeling again.
You talked about the self-compassion aspect, and that really is a huge part of it. I don't
Yeah.
know why we have this idea, and I have it too, where I have to be the best at something.
Yeah.
And I really don't need to be. I just need to be my best. I don't have to be the best, better than everybody. Like, I think that might be another thing that's probably not beneficial for our society, is this competitive nature of, we have to be better than everybody else. And I think that whole failure part really, really ties into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. And I think, if we just acknowledge that we're having these feelings, this is such a silly example, but I've caught myself several times. I started doing different word games or puzzles each morning when I first get up, to wake up my brain, make sure it's staying sharp. And no one else sees that. No one else will know how I did. And I was finding myself first enjoying it. And then if I couldn't solve it, getting frustrated. And then those feelings start coming up. And I kept at it until I got it, right? Like, not an enjoyable thing, right? And I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, when it's not fun anymore, stop it. Wasn't doing, I'm not trying to, do some kind of a mental decathlon or something. I'm just trying to do something that's enjoyable, that gets my morning started. So again, I do agree that a lot of it's worrying about what other people think, but we've got some stuff going on ourselves about what you were just talking about, where we have to do it perfectly or the best, or we have failed.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay, if you fail at Wordle, what's the consequence? Like, it doesn't matter, right? But I catch myself going the other way. This is definitely part of mindfulness. Okay, I don't want to get super excited when I get it. Like this morning, I got Wordle on the second word. Now what? I'm going to celebrate and say I'm a genius, right? No, you want to stay like, okay, good. That was a good exercise. But actually, I learned less doing
Right.
that when it takes me 4 or 5 tries, or whatever, it's a crossword puzzle, or I have like 4 or 5 I do to get my brain to work in different ways. So again, that comes back to self-judgment. I'm going to put myself down because I couldn't get the New York Times connection, right? It's like, no, why? Because I start thinking, am I not smart? Right? Am I
Yeah.
stupid? Is something wrong with me? And no, there's not. I mean, in my opinion, it's just a matter of that winning thing, the ego kicking in and wanting to conquer or master or
Hmm.
something. And it's like, that's not the purpose. So maybe part of this, I think what we're both talking about is maybe setting the intention of why you're doing something.
I was just going to say that because I think a lot of us start to do things because somebody else says, "Oh, you should try this." So you go and you try it and you don't do well at it. And you continue to try and you don't do well at it. And then giving up on something, to me, if you're enjoying it, then I would absolutely don't give up on it. If you're enjoying the process and this is something that you truly have a passion for, don't give up on it. But listen, I tried skiing once because my husband really wanted me to ski. And I really didn't want to, but I did it anyway. I failed miserably. But and I gave up on it. Like after twice, I tried twice and I gave up on it. And I am not upset with myself for giving up on it because it was not my thing. It's not my jam. I wasn't enjoying a single second of it. So I think it's okay to give up on something that you aren't good at if you're not enjoying it.
I agree. I mentioned earlier too, now that you brought up the sort of giving up or walking away, it works on the flip side too. If you feel strongly that you're good at something, or you've developed it over time, or you just have that gut feeling this is right,
Mhm.
but you're running into barriers. This is where that timing and persistence comes in, right? So, the one we use in our workshops all the time is J.K. Rowling's with Harry Potter. So she was turned down multiple times by publishers, which I'm sure they all kicked themselves afterwards. But if she hadn't been persistent and just kept plugging away because she believed in what she was doing, then she's like close to the top of best-selling authors. Um, the Beatles were rejected by multiple studios if they had not believed in what they were doing. In fact, one of the studios told them that something along the lines of, uh, bands based on guitar are on their way out. And that was the Beatles, right? Um, there's so many examples like that. Michael Jordan got
Mhm.
kicked off his high school basketball team. Okay, if he had said, okay, well, even though I believe I'm good at this, but clearly I'm not. So that goes back to what other people think too, right? You have to have faith in yourself. So I agree with you. If you love doing something, even if you're not great at it, but you love it, keep at it, because you will become great at it. Vincent van Gogh only sold one painting while he was alive,
Yeah.
but he didn't give up. Now, I'm not saying that's something to aim for, but I'm just saying he believed in what he was doing, and he had mental health issues and all kinds of things, but he knew he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. So you don't give up. If you're enjoying it, or if you believe it's either your purpose or something that you want to contribute, then you have to stick with it, and over time
Mhm.
you'll find your niche, right? But it does take that perseverance or that persistence.
Yeah, you have to define what your why is. Are you doing this thing that you're so passionate about because your goal is to, make this how you make your living? Or are you just doing it for the enjoyment of it? There's a lot of people. There's a musician, I can't remember his name, on YouTube, who he is incredible. And he stands outside of these arenas where these huge stars are singing and they know who he is and they will come and sing with him before their show for
Right.
a crowd of like 30 people. And he's happy to do that. That's his purpose. He loves it. So even if it's something where you love it, you're good at it, you don't have to make it this thing where it's your living. It can still be something that you enjoy and do and be successful at. You just have to define, what does that success mean? Is success making oodles of money, or is success just me being happy? Whatever it is, make it in line with that.
Again, when you think it sounds so simplistic, but if someone asked me right now to build like a shed, I'm not a carpenter. So I don't have all those, I have some of those skills, but I don't have all of those skills. If you take the standpoint of I'm not good at it or I don't know what I'm doing, then you're not growing or learning. Now I have actually pretty good confidence I could build a shed, but that's because I've done some volunteer work for Habitat for Humanity. I've used a hammer and a saw. But if it was something that I'd never done, never, oh, I don't know how to sew. I bought a sewing machine during the pandemic, still haven't even used it once. But it's not because I think I will fail at it. I don't think I'll be great at it at first, but that's the real point. Professional seamstress, they have practiced and done a ton of work to get to what they're doing. An actor or a singer, like you were just talking about, they didn't, well, most of them, there are some prodigies, but most of them didn't, wake up at 4 and could sing an opera or something or whatever it is. They practiced. Michael Jordan practiced all the time to become a great basketball player. So I think what you said about why are you doing it? If you understand why you're doing it, I think that's 90% of the battle. The second part is you can't let fear prevent you from practicing to see if you can develop it into whatever it is it's going to become. So that fear of failing, I agree with you that when it comes to that, like you've found the thing, you want to do it, you want to get better at it, then I think a lot of times it is the external pressure that
Yeah.
stops a lot of people. Oprah Winfrey was fired as an anchor from the first news job she had. So, hello, like
Yeah.
if she just said, "I must not be good at this," it's a failure. Then you can see the change in the trajectory of all of these people. So it's really a matter of if you have your why and you also process the fears, the emotions that come up around possibly failing, then I think you've got like sort of this golden path for your journey because those are the two main aspects that either allow us to flourish or prevent us from trying because we've got these limiting beliefs.
Yeah. I mean, never let somebody else dictate your success or failure. That's on you. And I know that's probably tough love, I guess, but it truly is on us. And I think when we can realize that, when we have that aha moment, like, oh, I screwed up. That's my fault. It's nobody else's fault. And there's no excuses. There's none of that going on. We really are the person that controls all of it. Nobody else can tell us if, we are a success or a failure at something. It's how we perceive it.
And I think too, again, the extremes, if we're going to beat ourselves up for failing, then we're going to like celebrate and we award ourselves for succeeding. But if we kind of bring each of those to a more middle ground, enjoy your accomplishments, but recognize there's always more to learn. When you have a failure, recognize that, okay, it didn't work yet, whatever it is. And what can I learn from that? And if you just kind of get that more even keeled perspective on it, it tames the ego down a little bit too. And then I think it makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
You're taking some pressure off if you're succeeding, but you're lowering the pressure on you to keep exceeding that success. And on the failure end, you're recognizing that that's just part of the process. And so, okay, how many more failures do I have to go through before I finally get it right?
Yeah. And on another note, I think if you have reached that pinnacle for yourself where it's like, I have succeeded at this and you've mastered something, but you're no longer finding that joy in it, where now it's like you're going through the motions and you're not, that passion's kind of gone, then maybe it's time to start something new and find another avenue to learn instead of fail. Until you master it again. And, we can go through these processes with so many things, and that's just going to expand our joy even more.
I agree. All right. So I hope everyone's ready to go out there and fail a little.
Let's fail together, guys.
And just, I highly encourage you to just start automatically replacing failing with learning. we're all always learning, which is what makes life interesting. So
Absolutely. And I hope you have a successful week, and we will see you again soon.
thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to other great shows. Visit our website, amindfulmoment.com, to access podcasts, scripts, and reading recommendations. A Mindful Moment is hosted by Teresa McKee and Melissa Sims. This podcast is produced by Work to Live Productions. Thank you for tuning in.